Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is for the 3rd through 6th graders. As we continue our exercise here of reading this chapter book entitled The Tiger Rising. Yesterday we read chapters 1 and 2, and you should have been able to put together some information about the characters, the setting, what kind of events were happening, and summarizing those 2 chapters. Well, we met Rob, and Rob is one of the main characters in this story. And we learned about the Kentucky Star Motel, which is where he waited for the bus. We also were in the woods, where he found a caged tiger, of all things. And then that was right next to the old Beauchamp gas station that was long since dilapidated and run down, fallen apart, way back in the woods. We also learned that Rob moved from Jacksonville, Florida, and he moved to Lister, Florida. And that was after his mom had died. We saw Rob get on the bus, and we saw him getting bullied by the Threemonger brothers, Norton and Billy. And we also were introduced to Mr. Nelson, who was the bus driver, who whistled sort of aimless songs that didn't make any sense. And as we ended chapter 2, we were just being introduced to another new character, and that was the yellow-haired girl. Part of the setting, it was kind of a gray, dreary, rainy day. As we go into chapter 3. Nobody wore pink lacy dresses this school. Nobody. Even Rob knew that. He held his breath as he watched the girl walk down the aisle of the bus. Here was somebody even stranger than he was. He was sure of that. "Hey," Norman called. "This is a school bus." "I know it," the girl said. Her voice was gravelly and deep, and the words sounded clipped and strange, like she was stamping each one of them out with a cookie cutter. "You're all dressed up to go to a party," Billy said. "This ain't the party bus." He elbowed Rob in the ribs. "Ha!" Norton laughed. He gave Rob a friendly thud on the head. The girl sat and stood in the center of the aisle, swaying with the movement of the bus. She stared at them. "It's not my fault you don't have good clothes," she said finally. She sat down and she put her back to them. "Hey," said Norton, "we're sorry, we didn't mean nothing." "Hey," he said again, "what's your name?" The girl turned and looked at them. She had a sharp nose and a sharp chin and black, black eyes. "Sistine," she said. "Sistine," hooted Billy. "What kind of stupid name is that?" "Like the chapel," she said slowly, making each word clear and strong. Rob stared at her amazed. "What are you looking at?" she said to him. Rob shook his head. "Yeah," said Norton. He cuffed Rob right on the ear. "What are you staring at, diseased boy? Come on," he said to Billy. And together they swaggered up the aisle of the bus and sat in the seat right behind the new girl. They whispered things to her, but Rob couldn't hear what they were saying. He thought about the Sistine Chapel. He had seen a picture of it in the big art book that Mrs. Dupree kept on a shelf behind her desk in the library. The pages of the book were slick and shiny, and each picture made Rob feel cool and sweet inside, like a drink of water on a hot day. Mrs. Dupree let Rob look at the book because he was quiet and good in the library. It was her reward for him. In the book, the picture from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel showed God reaching out and touching Adam. It was like they were playing a game of tag, like God was making Adam it. It was a beautiful picture. Rob looked out the window at the gray rain and the gray sky and the gray highway. He thought about the tiger. He thought about God and Adam, and he thought about Sistine. He did not think about the rash. He did not think about his mother. And he did not think about Norton or Billy, threemonger. He kept the suitcase closed. Chapter 4. Sistine was in Rob's 6th grade homeroom class. Mrs. Soames made her stand up and introduce herself. "My name," she said in a gravelly voice, "is Sistine Bailey." She stood at the front of the room in her pink dress, and all the kids stared at her with open mouths as if she had just stepped off a spaceship from another planet. Rob looked down at his desk. He knew not to stare at her. He started working on a drawing of the tiger. "What a lovely name," Miss Soames said. "Thank you," said Sistine. Patrice Wilkins, who sat in front of Rob, snorted and then giggled and then covered her mouth. "I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania," Sistine said, "home of the Liberty Bell. And I hate the South because the people in it are ignorant. And I'm not staying here in Lister. My father is coming to get me next week." She looked around the room defiantly. "Well," said Miss Soames, "thank you very much for introducing yourself, Sistine Bailey. You may take your seat before you put your foot in your mouth any further." The whole class laughed at that. Rob looked up just as Sistine sat down, and she glared at him. Then she stuck her tongue out at him. "Him!" He shook his head and went back to his drawing. He sketched out the tiger, but what he wanted to do was whittle it in wood. His mother had shown him how to whittle, how to make a piece of wood and make it come alive. She taught him when she was sick. He sat on the edge of the bed and watched her tiny white hands closely. "Don't jiggle that bed," his father said. "Your mom is in a lot of pain." "He ain't hurting me, Robert," his mother said. "Don't get all tired out with that wood," his father said. "It's all right," his mother said. "I'm just teaching Rob something I know." But she said she didn't have to teach him. His mother told him he already knew what to do. His hands knew. That's what he said. "Rob," said the teacher, "I need you to go to the principal's office." Rob didn't hear her. He was working on the tiger, trying to remember what his eyes looked like. "Robert," Miss Soames said. "Robert Horton." And Rob looked up. Robert was his father's name. Robert was what his mother had called his father. "Mr. Felmer wants to see you in his office. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," said Rob. He got up, took his picture of the tiger and folded it up and put it in his back pocket of his shorts. On his way out of the classroom, Jason Utmeyer tripped him and said, See you later, retard. And Sistine looked up at him with her tiny black eyes, and she shot him a look of pure hate. Well, that concludes chapter 4. Think about the events that transpired in these 2 chapters. Think about the mood, the setting, the new characters that were introduced, and we'll be back to continue this story tomorrow. You guys take care, stay safe, and be kind to each other.